गुड मॉर्निंग एवरीवन। उम्मीद है आप ठीक ठाक होंगे और खैर से होंगे। तो यूँ हुआ कि मोंटेना में हमारा फेस्टिवल था, वो ख़त्म हुआ और अभी हम यहाँ देखने आए हैं वर्ल्ड ऑफ माइनिंग। ये दुनिया का जो है ना सेकंड बिगेस्ट कॉपर माइंस यहाँ मौजूद हैं और यहाँ एक बहुत बड़ा म्यूज़ियम है। आज हम आपको म्यूज़ियम दिखाते हैं। ये ब्यूट मोंटेना एक्चुअली एक बहुत बड़ा स्टेट है और इसी में ये ब्यूट इलाका है और आप देख सकते हैं अमेजिंग। अभी हम अंदर जा रहे हैं और ये शिराज लोग गपशप लगा रहे हैं। राजा का नारा लगा शपका हुए तासे का वो डेर आला यार, डेर आला। ये म्यूज़ियम में हम अंदर आ गए हैं। फिर तेज़ हवा ना था डेर बिल्कुल। माशाल्लाह माशाल्लाह। तो मेरा नवाल बताओ।
1956. In 1956, the Anaconda Company shuts down the Orphan Girl. They turn it over to Silverboe County. In 1965, Silverboe County is going to open up a museum. They call it the World Museum of Mining to honor the people that came from all over the world to work the mines here in Butte. We had people from Eastern Europe, Western Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. We had over 30 languages spoken in Butte at one time. We had over 30 nationalities. It was a real melting pot. They used to have a saying in Europe. They'd say, when you get there, go right past America and go directly to Butte. That was where Butte got its nickname, Butte America, and it's a real thing that happened. People actually did skip Ellis Island. They came all the way out to Butte and they applied for citizenship right here in the Silverboe County Courthouse. The gold rush of 1849, okay? That gold rush was not the first gold rush in American history, but it was certainly important as to spreading the idea that you are going to go out west, you're going to find a shiny rock, and you're going to become a wealthy man, okay? That gold rush reaches Montana just a year later in 1850. We have our first gold camp. It's called Gold Creek. It's just down the stream from here. By the late 1850s, we have the gold rush reach Butte. In those days, we're going to get up to a population of 2,000 people. We're going to name it Butte City, and we're going to be working up on the surface doing what we call placer mining, working gravel pits using gold pans and sluice boxes, and we're looking for native gold, so already shiny metal rocks. That is going to exhaust itself pretty quickly, and Butte's going to drop to a population of about 75 people. And it's at this time, the rest of the country is engaged in a civil war. We just have a few stragglers left here in Butte. One of those guys' name was William J. Parks. He has a very bold new idea. He has seen rocks up on the surface that lead him to believe that if he were to go underground in Butte, he would find mineral composites that contain much more metal. Those mineral composites we would call ore, okay? Now, he had some business partners that were working with him in those gravel piles. They think his idea of going underground is ludicrous. The people of town consider him a laughingstock. He's made fun of. Nobody's into his idea, and so he is going to embark on his quest all by himself. All he has to work with is this device called a windlass. He has a bucket like this, although his bucket is a beer keg that's cut in half. He's got some hand tools and some loose black powder. In order to sink his shaft, he is going to climb down a ladder. He's going to lay that black powder down, then climb back out of the shaft, detonate that black powder, then lower his bucket down into the shaft, climb back in, fill that back bucket up, climb back out, crank it up to the top, dump the bucket. Now he's ready to repeat the process. He is going to do this in and out, up and down his mine shaft, non-stop, working 12 to 16 hours a day by himself for 3 years. After 3 years, he's going to reach a depth of 140 feet. He will find what he's looking for. He's going to send those first ore findings all the way to the country of Wales in the UK. In Wales, they're going to smelt that. That's a process to get the metals out. They are going to send word back to him that he has struck very big. And now all of those people that were waiting on the sidelines, making fun of him, calling it Park's Glory Hole, of course, now they all want to sink a shaft, okay? So they're going to start what we would consider the silver rush in Butte, okay? We're going underground. We're looking for silver. Now, at that time, we're finding a lot of copper, but there's just not a lot of global demand for copper yet. So a lot of that copper is actually finding its way into the waste piles in Butte. But by the end of the 1800s, we're going to have a couple of inventions that are going to require a lot of conductive material. Those inventions would be electricity and the telegraph. Very good. Okay. We have a guy out here that's going to put those pieces together. He's going to realize Butte's got a lot of copper that's going to waste. He's also going to realize that that copper could be the answer to these new inventions. This guy's name is Marcus Daly. He came out here fresh off that California gold rush. He got a job at a silver mine called the Alice. He was working up as supervisor up there. He sees all this copper getting thrown away. He realizes all of this, he's going to keep it hush-hush secret to himself. He finds a mine that is down on its luck. It's a silver mine called the Anaconda. He is going to buy that Anaconda mine with some outside investment and start developing it for copper. Butte's first copper mine in any significant definition of a copper mine. He does this exact right place, right time, ends up becoming one of the wealthiest men west of the Mississippi. A big part of Daly's success comes through his dominance of the smelting process. So we're going to talk about smelting next. We're going to walk up to this wheel device up here and we'll talk about smelting. As we walk, I'll tell you guys a little bit more about Daly and his Anaconda company. Daly is a real monopoly man, okay? You've maybe heard of a vertical monopoly or a horizontal monopoly. Neither one's good enough for our guy Daly. He's got to have it both ways. So every aspect of the mining process, from extraction to smelting to refinement to even the sale of copper products, he'll buy all that up, but also everything his mines need. That includes all the railroad infrastructure out here, all the water infrastructure, and every last timber operation in the state. At one point, Daly's Anaconda Company is going to employ about 80% of the workforce in Montana. He will die, Daly dies in 1900, but his Anaconda Company will continue working towards his goal of monopolizing all of the mining in town. And by the 1920s, the Anaconda Company will own every last mine on the Butte Hill. A big part of the success Daly has comes through his dominance of that smelting process. He is going to build a company town 20 miles downstream from Butte, and he calls it Anaconda. That's where he's going to set up the smelter, where we're going to take those rocks that contain metal and we're going to turn them into metal, okay? So we're pulling that ore up out of the ground. The first step we're going to do is crush it up. I have a crushing device here called a stamp mill. This one is actually from the nearby town of Silver Star. It was unique in that it ran off a water wheel. So you have a big water wheel stuck down in the Jefferson River. As that river current came by, it turned a leather belt, turning this upper wheel, driving those pistons to crush the ore up. We had stamp mills in Butte. They would have run off some other power source like steam or diesel. We also have these things called Ellis mills that were used for grinding ore. Same idea. We're going to get it ground down. Then we're going to run it through what we call a concentrator. Back in the day, the concentrators were built down the side of a hill, like a zigzag of troughs. We're going to run water through those troughs. It's going to flush out the lighter weight waste rock, leaving the heavier ore behind. Then we can heat that ore up. We're aiming for the temperature of the melting point of the metal we want to extract. So we're getting it really, really hot. Then we're going to add some chemicals called flux. Flux is going to help that metal separate out, at which point we can pour it into something like this. These are those first pour copper ingots. Ingot, yep, these are 80% copper. They weigh about 500 to 550 pounds. What's left over is this stuff called slag. I'll pass around this sample. That slag is basically the melted down bedrock of Butte. That bedrock of Butte is mostly, or it's commonly referred to as granite. It's technically quartz monzonite, and it is mostly silica dioxide. Okay, so despite the appearance of that slag, it is basically the same chemical composition as a piece of glass. Yep, it's the same stuff as glass. Now there's another form of silica dioxide I think that slag looks a little more familiar to, and that would be volcanic obsidian. The reason that looks like volcanic obsidian, same exact source, okay? That hill right there, it's got an M on it. That's Big Butte, that's where Butte gets his name from. That M is originally for the School of Mines, now Montana Tech. That is the cone of a dormant volcano that erupted 49 million years ago. When that volcano erupted, it brought up all this igneous rock that is full of the silica dioxide, but it also brought up metals from the core of the earth. Those metals over those millions of years get distributed around Butte into various veins of ore. When we talk about all the veins of ore, we call it the ore body. We're going to go underground. We're going to get into that ore body. We're going to extract that ore. We're going to pull it up to the surface using our big, beautiful head frames that you guys played music under. Okay. We're going to then load it onto an electric train, the first electric train west of the Mississippi. That electric train is going to run from the mines up on the hill, just below this college, just below this museum, over to that town of Anaconda, where we're going to run it through that smelting process, pulling out various metals. The biggest metal that we're responsible for pulling out here in Butte is copper. And that copper is going to help electrify the world as we know it. During the period of time where we're electrifying the world, about 1/3 of the world's copper supply comes from Butte. So I would imagine even in Pakistan, there's probably some Butte copper that is running.
Probably. Could be.
Yeah. Certainly everywhere in America. We're going to electrify the world, and Butte's actually going to get a jump start on that electrification process because we have the copper out here. We know what it's going to be used for. We end up with a fully functional electrical grid here in Butte 4 years prior to New York City.
Wow.
Yeah, that's our big bragging point here in Butte. All right. Are there any questions about electrification, the Anaconda Company, smelting, or William J. Parks?
What's the big hole? There is an Anaconda board. Is that something to do with this?
The big hole?
Yeah. You're going towards that. There is a board called the Anaconda that way.
Yeah, the Anaconda, that's a town.
Yeah.
And you'll see that huge smokestack. That's the smokestack from the smelter.
So that has something to do with this.
Yeah, that's where Daley built his company town to do all the smelting. So he had better water supply over there, and he also did not want that toxic smoke from the smelting process mucking up the lungs of his miners. So he moved it over there so that it would keep the miners' lungs clear, although they weren't that clear. They weren't that clear. But that is his supposed reason. The miner's dry, in order to understand how it got here and why it's important, I'm going to tell a few more stories because I like telling stories, obviously. Okay, so for the first story, we're going to go back to 1881. Marcus Daly's working as supervisor up at the Alice mine. They're going to lower the wages of the unskilled workers because of the silver drop, price in the stock market, the price of silver drops. They're going to lower the wages of the workers from $3.50 a day to $3 a day. And all the miners, even the guys that didn't have their pay dropped, all got together and said, we're not going back to work. Okay, this was Butte's very first strike. It was not the first strike in America, but it was a very important strike, both in the history of Butte, which will go on to have a long labor battle. This was considered the Gibraltar of labor. We have the first mining union here. We have a whole extensive history of the unions fighting for various things here in Butte and fighting amongst each other. There's all-out wars between them at times. But it also is going to spur a influence on the union movement throughout the country, which is going to really take hold at the turn of the century and lead to all sorts of things we now take for granted, like the 8-hour workday, safety regulations, the abolition of child labor, and of course the weekend. We love the weekend, don't we? All right. So those unions are going to fight for all those things. In Butte, though, we're not just fighting for better wages and better hours. We're also fighting for better working conditions. And to understand why we need to fight for those working conditions, we're going to learn a lot about that today. But one of the things is, if you didn't know, Butte is one of the coldest places in the country, okay? And when you go underground, it can get really hot because of that because of the volcanic pass. There's a lot of geothermal activity. The highest temperature ever recorded underground in Butte, 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Super hot, okay? That's kind of an outlier, but not uncommon to have to work a whole shift at 150 degrees Fahrenheit, especially in a hot mine like the Belmont. Now, there was a day the guys were working the Belmont, 150 degrees the whole shift, came up to the surface and it was 50 below zero. So it's a 200 degree Fahrenheit jump in a matter of minutes. Yep. It is not good for your immune system, okay? So that is one thing the dry is gonna help out with, is so that these guys don't have to walk home all sweaty coming out of a hot mine like that in the bitter cold. The other thing, yeah, it's a 100 degrees Celsius jump. 100 degrees Celsius jump. 65 yep. Degrees, yeah. 65 to negative 40 underground, or on the surface, negative 40, yep. So, the other thing that the dry is going to help with, as we go underground in Butte, there's a lot of sulfides left over from that volcano. And when you expose things like copper sulfide to air and water, it creates sulfuric acid. And that acid would have been dripping down on these guys' clothes. So when they get out of the mine, they're going to jump in the shower with all their clothes on, try to rinse that acid off their clothes to try to make the clothes last a little longer. Then they're going to come into the locker room portion of the dryer. They're going to hang those wet clothes off hooks like this, hoist those hooks up to the surface or to the ceiling, and there they can dry out. So when they come back for their next shift, they're going to lower those clothes down, put those same clothes back on, go back into the mine.
Some particular kind of clothes which are resistant to sulfuric acid, or
Back in the day, the clothes they wore is like what you would expect a miner, like flannel shirts, bib overalls. They were responsible for their own clothes. They didn't have uniforms. So you'll see old pictures of Butte miners, and they'll have like a flannel shirt on that's got weird holes in it, and that's because that acid slowly ate away their clothes. At all, let alone as much as they did working by candlelight. Now they have these candlestick holders. They've got a spike at one end. You might be able to drive that spike into the rock to free up your hands to work. More likely though, you're going to take that hook that's on the back, you're going to hook it onto your mining helmet, and you're just going to balance it there while you're working. Okay? Not ideal. So our miners are very excited with the invention of the carbide lantern. These work off an oxyacetylene reaction, so they're similar to a welding torch. Okay? They're very bright, but they're very hot and they're very dangerous. Now everybody's walking around with a flame shooting out of their helmet. This actually leads to one of the worst mining disasters in American history, the Speculator Mine Fire in 1917. That fire is started when a miner is sent down to investigate a split open electrical wire. The inner core of that electrical wire is a piece of paper coated in oil to act as an insulator. He got too close to that paper core with his carbide lantern. It lit it on fire. The fire spread to the timbers which line the mine shaft. The timbers in Butte mines are soaked in arsenic, okay? We have a lot of arsenic lying around from that smelting process, and it's a great wood preservative, but it makes for a very toxic smoke. It's the smoke inhalation that takes the lives of most of the men that die that day. We lose 168 men. Across town, there's a memorial to the Speculator Mine Fire called the Granite Mountain Memorial. If I could only send you to one other place in Butte while you're here visiting, I'd tell you to go to that Granite Mountain Memorial, learn more about that mine fire. Okay? From the carbide lantern, we're going to go to the lead acid battery. These are big and heavy. The batteries don't last very long, and the lights are nowhere near as bright. So our miners are going to complain a little bit about the transition, but because they're so much safer, we're going to leave these lights in operation right up until the end of underground mining in Butte. Behind these guys right there, there's a rack from the Kelly. Kelly was the last underground mine in Butte that was in operation from 1947 until 1977. Nowadays, we're going to use lithium-ion batteries, LED bulbs. They're lightweight, they're bright, they don't start fires. We're going to have a great time in those, all right? All right, let's head on into the engine room. Yes, this is a good 150 horsepower electric motor. Wow. Quite a big step up from William J. Parks and his windlass, right? Yeah, that 450 horsepower electric motor is now driving the crank. A lot easier than a windlass. That's hooked up to this gearbox that actually allows these hoist drums to run in opposition to each other. So you could have one going up while the other one's going down. But everything that's going in and out of the mine is coming off this rope right here, okay? This steel cable, the best way to understand this, come this way, take turns, stand right here and look out this window, okay? Then come over here and meet me and I'll explain what we're looking at. So you've got that steel cable, that's coming off the hoist drums. It's going to the top of the steel tower. Up at the top of that steel tower, you'll see a wheel, okay? Steel cable's called a rope. The tower's called a head frame. That wheel up on top is called a sheave. So let's make sure we got room for everybody to get by and see that. At the bottom of that rope is one of two types of mine cages, okay? So if you are a man going to work, you're gonna get into a cage called a chippy. The chippy's gonna lower you down to a shaft station. Out of the shaft station, you're gonna come out and you're gonna work horizontally in what's called a drift. The drift is gonna follow a vein of ore. You're extracting that ore, you're loading it onto ore cars, you're sending it back to the shaft station to be loaded onto a different cage called a skip. That skip is gonna come halfway up that halfway up that head frame to that building out there called an ore house. Not to be confused with another prominent Butte institution. The ore house has a device inside called a grizzly that can flip that ore car, send its contents down a chute and onto the rail cars to take to the smelter. Okay, I know that's a lot of terminology to throw at you really quick, so I will do a review over here at this model, but first let's take a look at this device in here. This is an air compressor, okay? All of the tools that we run underground at the Orphan Girl are gonna run off compressed air. So this is running a lot of volume. It's actually low PSI compared to what we're used to filling up our car tires with, but you could run 30 or 40 tools off this thing at one time. Okay, that's sent down into our various levels of the mine using rubber hoses.
What's powering this?
This is powered off electricity. Yep, and that's electrical too. Everything's electrical. Yes, we're a real electric city. All right, we're going to send that down. This thing is going to be incredibly loud. You guys have heard a small air compressor running. You know how loud that is? This thing would have been deafening. This room would have been just totally more loud than we can imagine. All right. Next, we're going to come over to this model. I'm going to do a lightning round review. Try to get this terminology to come through to you guys. I will. You're going to have to pay attention really good, okay? Because I'm going to do a pop quiz at the end. All right. This model was built by a retired miner. It's not to any specific scale, as I can understand, but it's got all my parts, so I can go quick as possible through all that terminology. That shiv down into our shaft, out of the shaft station, into the drift, out of the drift in ore cars, back to the shaft station, onto the skip. Skip's coming halfway up the head frame, to the ore house, to the grizzly, to the chute, to the hopper, to the rail car, to the smelter, to the electricity in your homes. Okay? Pop quiz time. Vertical working of the mine is called a shaft, okay? Horizontal working of the mine is called drift, okay? And then we've got the two types of cages. If you're a man going to work, you're in a chippy cage. And if you're an ore car coming up, that's the skip. You guys got it? Okay, very good. All right, this platform with the levers back here, that's this platform with the levers. Have you guys come around to this? We'll talk about the hoist operator.
Quick question for you.
Yes.
Your ore carts, when they come up, I'm assuming they would come up in like a chain of multiple carts at a time?
Sometimes.
When they came off of your, it was like a dolly with tracks on it.
Yep.
Would they go back on the one and one would always be coming kind of up and down?
Ideally, you could run it that way.